Boom.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2 Minute Warning, coming to you live from the offices of the West Side Gazette in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The 2 Minute Warning is brought to you by the West Side Gazette, and to help co-host the show with me is my good friend and the publisher of the West Side Gazette, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, my brother?
I am terrific and getting better. It's been a while since we did this, Paris, so I might be a little rusty. You know, sometimes if you don't use it, you lose it. Uh, however,
Right.
however, we back in this saddle again, man. So let's do it. Mhm.
Oh yeah. Now we took a few weeks off, and sometimes I
Yeah,
just have to take a few weeks off to recharge and rethink and get back in there. And as you say, we back in the saddle. And man, while we were gone, there's been some crazy happenings.
it most certainly has. But if I can I steal a moment just to say some of the good things that have happened? Uh, the founder of the West Side Gazette, Mr. Levi Henry Jr., was in town for the 4th of July in the city of Fort Lauderdale's uh, celebration.
Right.
The city of Fort Lauderdale began about 10 years ago honoring people, citizens of Fort Lauderdale who contributed to, should I say, making Fort Lauderdale a better place from all aspects, to include um, narrowing or trying to constrict that racial divide. And so, doing this event that they do every year, uh, COVID stopped them last year. So, but every year they try to honor citizens with giving them a star on what's called the Walk of Fame. Now,
Right.
for anybody who knows anything about the Fort Lauderdale beach back in the 1950s, when there was a wade in because of segregation, Fort Lauderdale Beach was off limits to black folk unless they were out there working as maids or trashmen or have you. They couldn't be out there for any other reason.
Mm.
So to have an honor bestowed upon the founder of this newspaper was a tremendous feat. So I must say congratulations and thank you to Sonia Burroughs who recommended that Levi Henry Jr. be honored with his star on the Walk of Fame. And that's the sidewalk along Fort Lauderdale Beach. Now, if you were to walk along the Walk of Fame, you could see imprinted in the concrete stars with historians' names like George Burroughs, Beauregard Cummings, Aldrich, Miss Aldrich from the post office, just a few, and we know we should have more of our black pioneers with their names etched in stones and some of their accomplishments. So, to make a long story short, our father was in town for the 4th of July to receive his star on the Walk of Fame, along with some other pioneers in Fort Lauderdale. So I don't want
Mhm.
to shy away from them, but it's a mighty poor dog who can't wag his own tail. So I want
That's
to
right.
wag my daddy's tail, for him right now. He's back in North
Yeah.
Carolina, but he has been enshrined, if you will, into the history of Fort Lauderdale by achieving a star on Fort Lauderdale Beach's Walk of Fame. So I just want to say
Yeah.
congratulations to Mr. Levi Henry.
Yeah. Congratulations, Mr. Henry. You're right, man. That is a great honor, um, especially when you put it in its proper perspective about the history of Fort Lauderdale Beach, and just his commitment. These are tall shoulders that we stand on, and
Yeah,
he is to be commended for every accomplishment.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Again, I don't want to take away from the other awardees because
oh no,
rightfully so, they deserve it as well. But
right.
again, I just want to salute and give my father his flowers while he is still alive.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Now
yeah.
talk
So
about some
no,
of the
that
badness, Period. What's the badness going
well,
on, man?
well, after that, I mean, it's really hard to really focus on the bad, or should I just say the crazy?
Hmm.
That there's been just some craziness. Uh, but locally, I know of two events um, that has happened, both very tragic, and that is the collapse of the condominium
Hmm.
uh, in Miami Beach, um, and just a heroic effort that is still taking place
Hmm.
to recover uh, those who perished in that event. That was man, that's something.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
right.
to I mean to have your home collapse.
Mm.
I mean that you don't think of such disasters happening like that.
No, no, Perry. No, that's you're right. That's earth shattering.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah. Uh, wow. Takes your breath away. When you.
yeah, yeah, and it's also causing a lot of other um, properties now to really take a look, as well as those who live there. I know, as for me, someone who's still looking and was considering, even looking at a condo. That changes my ideas,
Mm.
really.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, and I hope that the builders who are coming into or
Hmm.
encroaching on the city of Fort Lauderdale in general, but in particular, the Sistrunk corridor,
Yeah,
and as gentrification comes in, I would hope that the material used, I'm not all too keen on this removal, urban removal, but I hope that the
right.
material being used is of such a quality that we don't experience happenings like
Yeah,
that. And God knows, I pray for those families, man. But I just,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so even now they are having to, while this is going on, to consider the legal ramifications. And
Oh, you hit on a good point.
yeah, yeah.
Legal ramifications. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because we can't forget that,
No,
And
no.
while we grieve, we do know that there are those who are trying to shirk responsibility.
Oh man, and speaking of grieving, my
Yeah,
brothers and sisters from Haiti, in that
yeah,
situation there, you know. But but
yeah,
but Perry, I am grateful that we have some our guests tonight, man. Some experts in law that could perhaps allow us to see another side of these things from the legal standpoint, as you mentioned. You know,
hmm
so
yeah, yeah. We have quite a bit. Yeah, everything from uh, property to still with the Derek Chauvin case, and man, just a lot. Voting. This
yeah.
whole thing that's taking place in voting, and we have state legislators on the run.
Mm. From your home state.
Right, right, yeah, they on the run.
Oh, the Alamo. No, no, no.
And the governor's acting like John Wayne on
Oh
them,
man.
and declared, well, the lieutenant governor.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting, just to see how that plays out. I mean,
You said something, Perry. In one state, they're on the run, and the governor is, a lieutenant governor has them on the run. And in another state, if you protest, you can get run over. But
right,
which is another situation that we should ask some of these attorneys.
Yeah.
When they get to
Well, yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited again to be back and always
Yeah.
we've been really blessed to have some great guests to join us, and tonight is no different. Um, as you said, we have some dynamic attorneys, not only just in uh, their ability to litigate, uh, but in just their desire to reach out to the masses. They have a show called appropriately The Attorneys.
Yeah. It's quite a show, man.
It's quite a show, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have um, the entire cast on tonight, and so let's not delay the time, and we're going to introduce. You want to go back and forth, or how you want to do it?
Yeah. You do one. I'll do one.
Okay,
Yeah. Let's go back and
okay,
forth. Okay. Mhm.
okay. Our first guest is attorney Sheila Stewart. She is from St. Louis, where she has the law offices of Sheila R. Stewart. She specializes in employment law, civil rights, immigration, and business law. And so, without further ado, let's introduce attorney Sheila Stewart.
All right. Come on, Sheila.
Hello, Sheila. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so glad to be here.
All right.
Uh,
Let's see if we can bring somebody on with her. Okay. So coming from Bloomfield, Michigan. Okay. We got attorney Urena
You
Rick Johnson. JD is a graduate cum laude of Eastern Michigan University and Thomas Cooley Law School. She is a partner in the law firm of Ricks and Associates, LLC of West Bloomfield, Michigan. Attorney Ricks Johnson's primary focus is business law, real estate, bankruptcy, and estate planning. At Ricks and Associates, they believe that every client is an important client to us, so we endeavor to make every experience pleasant and informative. Come on in, Miss Reeks.
Hello.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for having us on the show today. We're so excited.
Mhm. Thank you.
Great. And our next guest is no stranger to the show, attorney Rosie Williams from the Rosie Williams Law Group, right here in Miami, Florida. Attorney Williams specializes in administrative law, criminal defense, and she's previously practiced family law and probate law. Welcome again, attorney Rosie Williams. So good to see you.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Great.
Well, Perry, you switched up on me then. You switched up on me. But let me.
Well,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about our other guests. And so
She's in there, right? Let me do this. Okay.
yeah, okay.
Coming from Tacoma, Washington. Maybe she got caught up in the fog coming from Tacoma, coming out from that northwest coast to come here. The fires didn't stop her. She's here. We got attorney Vicki Jackson. It's from the law office of Vicki C. Jackson in Tacoma, Washington. She is a former prosecutor and previously practiced in New York. Attorney Vicki practices immigration law, criminal defense, and personal injury. So welcome to the program, Miss Jackson.
Good evening to all.
Yes, you
And
is.
correction, I've never practiced in New York. I don't know where that came from, but it's a pleasure and an honor to be here this evening.
Well, thank you. Let me clarify this and get this straight. Okay, so on the website, maybe you guys want to go back and get this right because it has on there practice in New York. So
Oh.
yeah, let's get that right. I don't want to, I don't want to say I did something wrong. But
Well, first of all, I get started. How did you all come up with this idea about the attorneys? Whose idea was it?
Don't all speak at one time.
That was
I didn't mean to come out with a hard one. Wait a minute.
Well, originally we all met actually at a convention, the Church of God in Christ convention. We all met there, and we were doing a presentation every year called Law Day, where we provided advice to leaders within the church and provided different information concerning the law. And we met from there and just really hit it off from there. And we've kept in touch with each other. And then with us keeping in touch with each other, we have been collaborating on different things. And we all kind of met together. And actually, Attorney Rossi Williams kind of spearheaded it initially for us to kind of collaborate on the show.
Mhm.
So we had all, like I said, we had all been collaborating based on doing the Law Day and doing other events. And then it just kind of birthed from there, the Attorneys TV show.
You know, we introduce you, giving a brief, just a snippet of what you attorneys are. So if each one of you would take just a few moments to tell us a little more about your background, because we didn't mention the fact that all of you are licensed ministers. So if we will, let's start with you, Ms. Jackson.
My name is Attorney Vicki Curry Jackson. I'm a graduate of the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And 1992, I have been practicing law in the state of Washington. I do immigration law, which is federal, so I can practice in any state, which allows me to travel. I also do some criminal law as well as family. A little bit of family. I've done family, bankruptcy, a lot of different areas of practice since I'm a solo practitioner. And personal injury, I've done that for quite some time. I enjoy the work that I do. I have children, grandchildren. I don't know if that's important if you want to know things about other things about us. But the chemistry between the four of us has been magnificent, and we work well together. As already stated, we met, and we just have been delighted to work together, and it's an honor to be here today.
Okay.
You want to go by? Let's go by alphabet. Who was that? J. Another J. Come on, Ms. Ricks Johnson.
Okay. Well, I'm Attorney Urena Ricks Johnson, and I've been practicing law in the state of Michigan for about 14 years. I primarily practice just outside of Detroit, but my clients are in the Detroit metropolitan area. I practice in the area of bankruptcy, real estate. I do a lot of probate work, and I do a lot of church law representation as well, as far as setting up nonprofits, things like that. And that's kind of, as we stated before, kind of how we met at a convention, you know, with all of us having that commonality of providing church law and advice to different churches. And then the camaraderie of us coming together as providing different areas of the law and able to collaborate.
Okay. Ms. Stewart.
Yes. Well, I am Sheila Stewart. I am a native of St. Louis, Missouri. I have a law practice in the suburb of Missouri called Clayton. And I do primarily employment law, and I'm also a human resources consultant. I do a lot of human resources consulting, and I have dual master's degrees in human resources development and training and management business. And so I do a lot of work with smaller companies, giving them advice on employment manuals, how to develop manuals, and I do control. Now my practice is moving more into transactional work, where I'm working with corporations, doing contracts for them as well. But my mainstay in law has been employment law. I love employment law. I love advocating for those individuals that have been wrongfully terminated or discriminated against in some form or fashion. Also, civil rights. I do civil rights law, and I'm also a licensed minister in the Church of God in Christ. And as Urena said, we all met at a Church of God in Christ convocation, I was putting together Law Day. And I was so impressed with the fact that attorney Rossi Williams, so the convocation was in St. Louis, so I'm from St. Louis.
Mhm.
But these individuals were willing to fly in and to participate in Law Day. And so Rossi Williams was flying in from Florida. Rix Johnson, she was flying in from Detroit, from Michigan. And Vicky, she was coming in from Washington. And I was like, oh my goodness, these women have a dedication for service. Because I don't know if I would have flown in. No, I would have flown in. I'm just kidding. But they flew in, and they were just pristine in their presentations and their understanding and grasp of the law. And so since that time, we wanted them on program for the years to follow and the years to come.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Certainly, last but not least, I've had an opportunity to discuss some things with Attorney Williams, and I am certain that we couldn't mention everything that she was involved in, but the fact that I won't do it, Ross. Attorney Williams, I'll let you tell us who you are. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, I'm very happy to be here with yourself, Mr. Perry, tonight. And not only that, but with all of my co-hosts from the Attorney TV show. I am Attorney Rossi Williams, founder of Rossi Williams Law Group in Miami, Florida, and serving the entire state of Florida. Our three main practice areas are administrative law, criminal defense, and civil law, including civil rights. I am also a registered nurse. I became an attorney due to my brother's incarceration. So straight out of high school, I enlisted in the military. While I was in the military, they paid my way through nursing school. And I was almost 2 decades into nursing when my brother was arrested and charged with drug crimes, elected to go to a jury trial and lost. And the day that the jury returned with their guilty verdict was the day that I started this process. So I am an alumnus of Tuskegee University and FAMU College of Law. I have been able and blessed to represent many people across the state of Florida in those areas. And then in select cases, we do family and probate law. It's my purpose to fight for your justice. I am also in the Miami-Dade NAACP on the executive committee, and there are so many other things. So I'm not going to take that time, but just go to the website, call rossiwilliams.com, and you can learn more about me. Again, thank you for having us on the show this evening.
Great. Okay. I wanted to, Perry, if you don't mind, I wanted to, before we get into some questions, I wanted to ask, what was it, and Attorney Rossi, you've already told us what brought you into it, but for the other attorneys, and what was it that, should I say, pushed or drove you into your current profession? What was it that caused you to, that laid on your heart heavy, that you wanted to become an attorney? Ms. Johnson.
I think that from the beginning, I was always fascinated when it came to the law. I had no clear direction. There was nobody in the law from my family or anything like that. But I always wanted to help and fight for people, along the way. So when I got into college, I really geared toward the law, and it was something that I really wanted to get into and to know about. I have always been an advocate for helping people and advocating for those that didn't have a voice. So the law has allowed me to do that in the areas of law that I practiced in, and that has kind of driven me to the current place where I'm at, just to provide that help and that assistance to those who don't really have a voice, to make sure that their voice is heard.
Okay. Ms. Jackson.
Interesting story. So growing up as a child, I had an aunt that always called me attorney because if you told me something, you had to tell me why. I wanted to know, well, why? And so she always called me lawyer or attorney. And my mom, when she had me, was pregnant with me, she asked God to give her an attorney. So it was just kind of something that was in the back of my mind growing up. And so after high school, I went to junior college and I studied speech and drama because I had done drama all through high school. So my intentions were to go to school to become an actress. And so I wound up getting married and had 3 children, went overseas with my military husband. And in 1985, he decided to get out. The 2 of us decided to go back to school. We both got our undergraduate degrees in speech pathology and audiology. And in order to practice in those fields, you have to have a master's degree. So my now ex-husband, he's deceased now, decided that he would go to the University of Idaho and check on the school there for the master's program. And when he went there, he says he found out they had a law school. He came back home. He says, you know what? I'm going to law school. I said, oh, you are? Well, I'm going too. So the both of us applied to law school with 3 children. We were accepted in the University of Missouri in Columbia with the 3 children, went through law school, and here we are. He wound up being a federal judge in St. Louis, passed away in 2018, but the both of us went through law school with 3 children, and I'm still here.
Okay.
Always had a right, always believed in justice and doing righteousness and fighting for the rights of others. And I have a strong love for church law also, defending the churches. So that's something that I believe it's a call from God, because many times I've wanted to walk away from it, but it's something just keeps drawing me back.
I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because I want our viewers to actually see the human side of what power is, and especially Black women, and so I'm glad we're having this conversation so we can see the normal, that word normalcy, say that MORNALCY, the mean normal. We can see that and still be a part of it. Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. I've always, from a child to the present, I've always had a concern about injustice. And I've always seen, growing up obviously as an African-American individual, I've always seen how marginalized groups and people of color, how they've always suffered some type of disparity, whether it's in housing, whether it's schools, or whether it's employment. And when there's a consistency in disparities, you will always fall at the bottom of the economic range. Disparities keep you locked out of education, housing, and we never even get to wealth building. We only can achieve hourly or income-based driven lifestyles. And I've always noticed that the African-American individuals or people of color, they are the ones that often face these issues. Even when individuals obtain education, it is still a fight to move us to the right realm that we deserve to be in. After we train ourselves, educate ourselves, there's still that wall and that fence of disparity that exists. So I believe that my job is to work to get rid of the injustice, and God's job is vengeance. So when I look at society, I often see it through the lens of injustice. Now, that doesn't mean that the individual does not have a responsibility to be effective, efficient, go to work, do what they're supposed to do, get there on time, leave on time, get off the phone, not playing on the internet. But oftentimes, after that individual performs all that he or she knows how to perform, there's still some type of interference with that individual that will cause that individual to lose their job or whatever type of resources that they have based upon their race or their nationality. And I have a problem with that. And so my issue is I want to do my part to stop that, to rid my portion of life or what's around me to get rid of that.
Okay.
Okay.
There was another period. You gonna join in because I can keep going there.
Yeah. Well, no, so hearing these, backgrounds. Again, we have this show called The Attorneys. When did that begin, and again, how did that come into fruition? It's open to anyone.
Our first show began this year. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Our first show began this year at the end of April of this year. We broadcast every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So right before this awesome show that you have was another awesome show, which was the Attorneys TV show. So we broadcast on the Now Network on television, but for those who don't have access, we also broadcast on our YouTube channel, which is the Attorneys TV show, and our Facebook page, the Attorneys TV show. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we tackle a new topic, no holds barred. So if you're looking for substantive discussion, that is us. And as the attorney said, we met at a convocation is what we call it, for the Church of God in Christ. But the Attorneys TV show, that is something that God had laid on my heart to do, to put that substantive information out there. And then I wanted to do it specifically with these three particular attorneys. So I told them about this show and what we could do with that, to be able to go and not only break down the law, but for America to see four very competent, very skilled, very prominent. I'm not even going to add the word beautiful, but I'll throw it in there if you like. African American attorneys who are coming in and breaking down the law in a nonpartisan manner. So we're not doing a show, for example, that's all about Black rights or all about Republicans or Democrats. We're dealing with the issues head on, whatever the issues are. If you want to learn the law, how the law affects it, hear the information, and to know what to do with it, the Attorneys on Thursdays, that's your show.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to.
And since we're all ministers, we do in.
Okay.
So I want to say that.
Yeah. No, I've had an opportunity to listen to two of the shows. Now you say it's on every week, and I noticed that you're on several platforms. Can you tell our viewers where they can find that? In addition to, I know you said the YouTube channel, but I saw some TV stations on there. So please share with us.
So on the, on the Now Network, on the
Definitely,
TV station.
thank you. The two best.
I'm going to give you, I'm going to pull up the
two
flyer.
best ways to find us with this comment. I'm so sorry. I'm thinking we're all speaking, but I may not be.
No,
It's all speaking. The most
I'm getting some feedback from you.
And
Okay, let me help her out there with some of the platforms that we're on. Okay, so you can find us on the Now Network, and if you can't access that, you can watch us online. You can use your mobile device to pull us up, and then we're also on. You can get us on Roku, Apple TV, YouTube, Facebook, Vexus, Tiki Live, and FTC TV.
And all that is through the Now Network, though. All of that is, if you can't access us through the Now Network, if you don't have it in your area, the Now Network is actually you can actually get that online, and it can be cast to those different stations.
Oh wow.
Okay. All right.
And so is Now part of public? Is it more the digital channels, or so is it more of a public
cable station available in certain areas, but it's only available in certain areas. But if you can't access it through your cable network, you can also get it online, and you can watch it online on that platform.
Great.
Okay, now that we got y'all here on this one, let's see what kind of stuff y'all talk about. You attorneys, let's jump right into some stuff. Okay, now one of the things that Attorney Williams, this is in your neck of the woods, as it pertains to HB1. Now we got a situation here where a lot of our readers and people we've talked to feel that the Cubans are getting a buy, if you will, on a law that was supposed to be instituted, if that's a word, by Governor DeSantis, the HB1. Could you elaborate on that for us, please?
Oh, definitely. HB1 was a bill that Governor DeSantis signed into law in April year, and that bill was birthed during the time of the Black Lives Matters protests, which pertained to the George Floyd murder. And what we saw across the nation at that time were people were protesting, and then there were usually white protesters who were against this driving through the crowds. So in the state of Florida, there was a law championed by some legislators here which passed that stated that if you were rioting or had some kind of unlawful assembly and you blocked the roadways, things that we saw such as that, those acts were now criminalized. And they weren't just criminalized, they were criminalized as felonies. In that law, he also he gave an affirmative defense to people who would be defendants in a civil case for driving through the protesters, for example. So if you drove through the protesters and you hit them, such as we saw in another state, and they then tried to sue you, you had an affirmative defense that you were free from civil liability because you could say that you were afraid for your life. And so at the NAACP and so many other stakeholders, we were challenging that law. We said it was unconstitutional because it was racially motivated. And the governor said not so. But then what we saw here, what you're referring to just yesterday, this week here in Miami, is we saw Cuban Americans and many other Americans who were non-Black out blocking the roadways, the highways, the interstates in Miami, doing it in Jacksonville. Those same things that people did when protesting Black Lives Matters, blocking the roadway in some instances for over 10 hours, but there was a different response. Whereas when it was the Black Lives Matters protest, the police were there, they were in riot gear, they were shooting pellets at us. With these protesters, the police, including the state troopers there, they didn't do a thing. They let these people stay there for all of this time. So now what we're seeing is people rising up and saying, we want HB1 repealed because we as Black people demand equal protection under the law. It's obvious that the only difference between the protesters last year and these were their race and nationality. And so we're saying this is unconstitutional and we want the law repealed. And in closing, what I say is we also make sure to say that this is not about Cuban people versus Black people. It's really not a situation of saying that we don't support our Cuban brothers and sisters who are protesting about what's going on in Cuba. It is definitely about the law. It's racially motivated, it's unconstitutional, it's discriminatory in its purpose, discriminatory in its effect, and those are the things that make a law unconstitutional.
Okay, cool.
Very good, Ross.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. So there's some other issues, Perry. You and I talked about.
Yeah. No, well, I think one of the issues that is facing all of us is voting and what's going on in the different states. I'd like to hear from our guests who are outside of Florida to hear what's going on within your states of Washington, Missouri, and Michigan. I know Michigan is the hot seat right now, anyway. So, who wants Attorney Rix Johnson? Because I know you're was it the Secretary of State said that this Trump stuff was malignancy now. So
Yes.
explain that.
Yeah, and that's something that we talked about even on our show when we did the voter suppression show. We talked about, and I gave specific examples of here in Michigan about how, you know, the voting has been challenged, and even from the federal level. You know, when former President Trump and when his aides specifically challenged the voting in Michigan, it was clearly motivated in a purpose, you know, that was very, you know, racially motivated. You know, people even mentioned certain states that were, certain cities within Michigan that were predominantly Black, like the city of Detroit, and those cities that they were targeting and basically saying that the voting process was not right in those areas because record number of African American people came out to vote. And I think that the real issue is the fact that because a record number of African American people came out to vote, they felt like the voter turnout was in some way caused by some type of voter tampering or some type of voter fraud. And it's been cleared, even in the state of Michigan, at the state level and at the federal level, that there was no voter fraud involved. People just came out and voted. I know specifically because we were hit so hard with COVID-19, the fact that we had precautionary measures in place, we had the absentee ballots, we had things in place that helped people to understand that voting was important, but also gave them the opportunity to vote, you know, from their home and send in those ballots. I think that those things were helpful, and they did not cause voter fraud, but it actually just caused voter participation. So I think that the system itself, when we just target certain groups or certain states, is primarily racially motivated, and it should not be followed at all. And I've been an advocate here in Michigan, you know, with the voting rights and educating people on their fundamental right of voting and making sure no matter who you vote for, that you get out and vote.
Yeah. Well, and let me just interject. Well, we have seen some voter fraud.
Yeah, we
and
have,
in fact, there's been some Republican officials.
Yes, on one side, but what they've been challenging has not been the voter fraud that is actually in place. So we've seen it on the other side, but what they've challenged has not been substantiated, and which has been unfortunate. So their allegations of voter fraud has not been substantiated at all. On the counter, you know, the incidence of voter fraud has been on the other side, which is very sad. So, you know, we have definitely seen it. And our Secretary of State, our governor, you know, and even the mayor for the city of Detroit has really been advocating for making sure that we go above and beyond, making sure that voter fraud is not tolerated on any level.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I think there was a case recently. Was it in Michigan or Missouri? You had an African American man who voted. He was a few months shy of being pardoned, or should I say paroled. He was still on parole and thought that his rights had been restored, and voted in November, and they realized that he was 4 months shy, and now I think they're talking about putting him in prison.
And you know, this is the thing too that we've talked about even on our show about how even convicted felons, we talked about that on our show as far as, you know, those fundamental rights of voting. I don't think that those should be even at issue with the fact of somebody exercising their fundamental right of voting. I think that that is definitely a civil rights issue of, and I know there's been a lot of people that have been advocating. I know the case that you're talking about that have been advocating for the fact of, that this was not necessarily voter fraud, because at that point in time, he thought that he was able to vote. And exercising that fundamental right should never be a crime.
Yes. Yeah. Attorney Stewart in Missouri.
Okay.
No, you guys are a battleground.
Right. Well, as you know, Missouri is a red state, and the trend is that voter suppression is only taking place where voter participation has grown or increased with people of color. So if you have a state, as Jarena was stating, that is Democratic, or a city or corridor that's primarily African American, the trend has been to find voter fraud in those areas. But if the state is trending towards red or voting Republican, then the issue of voter fraud is never brought to the table. And so it's so obvious that this is a discriminatory issue. From my point of view, a discriminatory issue where this fundamental right is being abridged upon by the government in many instances, because you have this right to vote. And if the right to vote is only called into question if I am from a majorative city of color, then there is a problem on the face of this issue as it relates to voting. So in the Missouri, you didn't have a lot of problems here, because the state was fundamentally red throughout, and you only had the blue areas, like in the bigger metropolitan areas like Kansas City and in St. Louis.
Okay.
Attorney Jackson.
In the state of Washington, there is voter fraud, but I can tell you that we don't have very many African Americans here. There's only about 4% African Americans in the state of Washington, 69.3% Caucasian, about 19% Asian and Hispanic. So, and unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of areas that are concentrated with just African Americans. It's all mixed up. In Washington, you can kind of live wherever your money takes you. That's the way it is here. But interesting, I had a young man call me last week saying that out of desperation, he voted twice. He used his dead son's Social Security number, and he voted not only for himself, but he also voted for his son who was deceased, and he was seeking an attorney. So I can say that they're very watchful here in the state of Washington. Out of desperation, he said, well, I just wanted to do something for my son, so I voted for Trump on behalf of my son. I thought that's what he would want me to do. But he was caught.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Right.
So we don't have a lot of that I'm aware of voter fraud. And you're in Washington, you can vote here if you've only lived here 30 days. As long as you've lived here about 30 days, you're over the age of 18. You can even vote if you have a felony, as long as you're not under the Department of Corrections supervision. So not a lot of problems, I would say, that I am aware of. And I can say that they are very watchful with voter fraud here.
Right. Well, I do have something to say about our ask. I understand voter suppression, but how is that just a legal fight, or how do we address that? I mean, because we talk about voter suppression, but I think one of the hardest things to do is put a number on that, because at the same time, while we've seen enormous African American turnout, and we have since 2008, 2012, and especially now in 2020, then my question ends up being, well, what is the magnitude of the suppression? And how do we best address that? I'm not saying that there isn't suppression. I know that there is. But how do we deal with that from a legal standpoint if you can't get any numbers around it?
I think that we have to start at the legislative level. I think we have to start with the senators, with the House of Representatives, who's representing us, because voter suppression. If they don't recognize that there's voter suppression out there, and they are in Congress and these laws are being passed and are not dealing with it, then we're going to continue to get the same outcome. Or if they see that there is a voter outcome like we've had previously, and then now they're trying to change it, which is what's going on now. When they see that there's more turnout in African American communities, then you have issues of redistricting. You have issues of talk about whether these certain people had the right to vote. Then you start getting into those things. Those are issues of voter suppression, because as Attorney Jackson talked about, you have clear voter fraud in areas where it's never even addressed. It's like, oh, that's okay. But as soon as you have, people that have, you're trying to cut out the fact that they have to show ID, in order to vote absentee, you start nitpicking over people when they are trying to vote, and trying to cut off that pretty much that ease for them to vote. And that they may not have a car, they may not have things in place in order to vote, and you start to try to take those things away, then to me, that's where you get into voter suppression.
Mm-hmm.
Let's throw some juice in here for a minute. Okay. The January 6th resurrection. Okay. Should Trump, and I don't even like mentioning the man's name.
Resurrection. Wait a minute. No. Not resurrection. Wait a minute. Trump sure would like that.
Resurrect him and put him up on the.
I'd like to hang him on.
Right. He was trying to hang Mike Pence.
I hang him on the cross.
Yeah. So okay. The insurrection.
There you go.
Now should y'all's former president be impeached?
Oh my God. Yes, my answer to that is yes.
Mm-hmm. Should he be indicted? He was impeached 2 times. Should he be indicted?
I would think so, and I can't wait to hear my illustrious co-host response. But I think so, because when you hold that type of power and leadership in a free world, and you know that you have 80+ million followers, or President Biden had over 80 million. He had like 71 million, which is a lot. So when you have like 71 million votes, and you have that type of power and that type of presence, that you can say things that can lead to the death, the murder, the rioting of individuals, you have to be held to a higher standard, and you have to watch what you say. And if you say things that can lead to uprising in the United States, and in the Capitol is siege, I think you should be held accountable for that language. Just like if I'm in an airport and I'm boarding the plane and I say bomb, I'm just, I can be held accountable for saying bomb or hijack, because those words present an imminent threat. And so the words that he used at many of his rallies, they presented an imminent threat. And there was a threat, and it was imminent, and people died and people were injured. So I do think he should be held accountable for the things that he stated and how he stated those things during that climate. It was a very tense and a very violent climate. And he continued to say, oh, it's going to be wild. It's going to be bananas. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. You have to fight. You got to fight like this. You have to fight like that. So I do believe he should be held accountable for that speech, which led to the insurrection.
Is there anybody that's different from her, from Attorney Stewart? Is there a different?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely Yeah, I did. I want to first laugh because you have 4 ministers and you said resurrection, and we all, just begin to look
Whoa,
forward. Okay,
Lord.
we're going to the Bible now. That was good for us. You said the word resurrection, everybody jumped up. Wait a minute. But I want to say, you asked you you asked 2 questions for me. One was, should he be impeached? The other was, should he be indicted? And so I have different answers for that. Should he have been impeached? I said no, and I still say no. I believe that the impeachment during the last few days of his presidency was really a politically motivated type of impeachment, wherein the thought process of Representative Pelosi, House Speaker Pelosi, and those who initiated this proceeding was that hopefully they would be able to obtain a conviction to stop him in the future from being able to run again. I know from the get-go, they really could not have thought that was going to occur, because although the impeachment commences in the House, it must be a conviction in the Senate. And at that time, the Republicans controlled the Senate, and there was not going to be a conviction that was going to come forth. So I felt it was a waste of taxpayer resources. I felt it was a waste of time. I felt it was a futile cause from the beginning. Now, whether or not he should be indicted later after the presidency is over, when he's a private citizen, which then at that time he can be indicted, is a totally different story, especially as more evidence has come forth. I don't think you can just use the words of someone saying, go and fight, and say that that would be an example of the exception to the First Amendment. I mean, we've seen Maxine Waters say fight. We've seen her even in the George Floyd situation where he was murdered say, if they don't come out, the jury doesn't come with a certain verdict, then this is what I want you to do. We've seen her say, get up in people's faces. We've seen Republicans do it. We've seen Democrats do it. That's why the First Amendment is there. So it goes beyond just your mere words. Now, at that point, when we saw this insurrection, which was no doubt a horrible and a tragic situation, I didn't believe that they had enough evidence to be able to say that former President Trump incited the riot just based on those words. So no, I didn't believe he should be impeached. I still don't believe he should have been impeached, but indicted as a private citizen now that we have more evidence, yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Because I do want to have a follow-up question to that, but I'll wait to see Attorney Johnson, Attorney Jackson. Do you guys want to say anything?
I do believe, yes, he should have been indicted, and he should be indicted. He's got a lot of other legal problems lurking over his head, and unless he's held accountable for his actions, he's on a road now campaigning to try to be the next president. So something needs to happen to show him that you, in a position of power and control, you can't just do and say whatever you want to, because so many people are listening to him, and there's still people thinking that he won the election. So he needs to be held accountable.
Okay. Now here's my follow-up question. Now, do you think he will be indicted? And if he isn't indicted, what do you think are the ramifications? Because I really don't see any difference in what Trump has, how he has turned his nose up at laws without any, recrimination. But then you have the Moors, a black group that was just stopped in Massachusetts, who are now saying, these laws doesn't apply to us. And it's setting up another side of that same coin, because Trump is really saying these laws don't apply to me either. First of all, do you think he will be indicted? And if not, what do you think are the ramifications?
I think he will be indicted based on, I think that the charges for him in New York are substantial. So I do think that in some way he will be indicted, for, even if it's for the financial part that he's done and has not been honest about, and has really, tried to be above the law. my concern is the fact is that he's been above the law for so long on whether this will actually stick this time. You know, that is definitely the concern that I have. And I do feel like if he is not indicted, that we do run the risk of him running again in 2024 and actually winning. And then I do think that, you know, we will have, you know, even more major people, because the problem with during Trump's administration, you had people that were undercover racists that kind of came out of the closet during his administration. He ignited some things in people that we kind of thought were not in existence or was not as strong as it was, that he ignited among different people. I know I had not seen as much you know, racist activity even in the state of Michigan, you know, even from the threats from our governor on down, that happened during his administration, that were, quite frankly, that were very disheartening and very much so, you know, a group of people that have this mentality that are now in charge. So I think that if we don't bring an end to this type of activity, I think that it just may open the floodgates for more activity of this magnitude and more discriminatory activity at the highest level, at the highest office of the land, which is the presidency.
You know, indictment is one thing. You know, what they're saying is you can indict a ham sandwich. Will he go to jail?
Do I believe he will go to jail? I believe if he's indicted, I believe that they'll have enough evidence in order to put him in jail. I believe if they get to that point of indictment, I believe that they've been gathering a lot of information over these past couple years. So I do believe if they get the indictment and get the charges brought against him, I do think that they'll have enough in order to bring justice, you know, in that matter.
Okay, so we won't resurrect him.
Well, I'm from Missouri. Which means
Show me.
I'm from the show me state, and you would have to show me Trump going to jail before I believe that one. So we have to wait and see on that. So you know.
Okay. So what's the legal ramifications about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask? What's up with that? And people on the plane getting thrown off and arrested because they don't want to put on their mask. What's up with that? How do we handle that?
It's a public health issue, and it's back on the rise again. California just issued some mandates were just issued in California that people need to start wearing the mask again because, you know, COVID is on the rise again. This Delta variation is causing a lot of people to get sick that have not received the vaccination. And we don't know those individuals from the ones that have been vaccinated. Now, I am in the state of Missouri, and unfortunately, Missouri is one of the states, along with Arkansas and some other southern states, that's driving the rise of COVID because there are many, many pockets in these states where individuals have refused to receive the vaccine. And, you know, you can't say that people that don't get the vaccine are not educated or don't have, you know, good understanding, because there's some relevant medical information out there that may make some individuals feel uncomfortable getting the vaccine. However, there are many people that's driving the rates of COVID going up, or individuals that have not received the vaccine and individuals that are not wearing the mask. Now, we have a nurse that's among us. And so she can talk more from a medical point of view about the health issues of the vaccine than I can. I am vaccinated, and I was excited to get it. I got it early. I'm fully vaccinated, both shots. I believe in the vaccine. I don't believe anything is going to happen to me. I'm going to wake up in the morning. I'm going to have a head sitting next to this head. Nothing strange is going to happen. The vaccine I believe, is safe. And I believe getting the vaccine is safer than getting COVID.
Okay, good point. Let me ask you this. Okay, Johnson & Johnson. Now, folks, they just took something off the market. Okay, so if I get this shot and I begin to grow another head, if you will, Do I have a right to sue?
You can sue over anything. I would say yes, you can sue.
Okay,
I didn't get the Johnson and Johnson vaccine. I got the Moderna. I never was going to get the Johnson and Johnson because of the prior issues that they had with the cancer, the ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
I just didn't trust their product to begin with.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to hear from the nurse. I want to hear from a medical person on this vaccine.
Well, I'm laughing about the extra head, but I think first of all, there are so many things to discuss within there. Let's first talk about, Attorney Sheila talked about the people who are vaccinated versus those who aren't. Although in social media and in this country, we can use social media and shaming for a lot of things. I definitely don't believe that this is an area where that should occur. Successful, believe in being vaccinated or who have concerns be vaccinated. So I think the first thing you have to deal with is the fact that the vaccination, it has not gone through all of the clinical trials. It is an FDA approved vaccination for emergency use, which is different from a medication having fully gone through all clinical trials and having FDA approval. And that was one of the main things with the science, when people kept saying, well, believe the science. The problem was the science kept evolving. Even if you remember when Dr. Fauci was there, at one point you didn't need to wear a mask. Next time you did. Next time children didn't need to wear masks. Then your children did. Then you needed 2 layers of masks. So you really couldn't ridicule people from the basis of saying you're uneducated, you're stupid, you're an anti-vaxxer, because you won't follow the science, when the science was not even an absolute nor concrete concept, even from the experts who were expounding upon the science. So that's the first thing, is to realize it is not an FDA approved vaccination. I mean, all 3 of them. It is an FDA approved for emergency use medication. And I think that was off-putting to a lot of people initially, because it didn't go through the clinical trials. Then what that would mean in their minds is that the people who would be the first volunteers to receive the vaccination, you are the clinical trials. That's the thought process. Let me see if you grow another head. Let me see if you grow another arm. Those are the things that
you don't grow another head, I get it.
Right. Let me see what happens to you. And then let's take a subset of the population, and that would be us as African Americans. Like Attorney Sheila said, she's from Missouri, the Show Me State, and I'm an alum of Tuskegee with the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. So you know that we have those situations where African American people remember that. And although people kept saying that was years ago, that's untrue. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study spanned almost 40 years in totality. And so there were other situations that have occurred as well. So now we get to that point, though, of saying, okay, there have been months that have gone by. You've seen the administration of the vaccine. You haven't seen people grow extra heads, tails, arms, or any other appendages. You have seen that some people who have accepted the vaccination have tested positive, but that's a very minute, percentage of the people who received the vaccination. And we did see that the country was able to open up. So I think when you then begin to look at the empirical data, you look at that evidence, then the person can sit down and say, should I be vaccinated? Barring some contraindication, then I would recommend that they do that. But if they choose not to, make sure they just wear their mask and follow the guidelines. Finally, to answer your question then about the liability, as Attorney Sheila said, you can sue for anything you want to sue, but can you prove the elements of the negligence you're alleging? Negligence has 4 elements: duty, breach, causation, and damages. So even though you grew the other head, right, you got to be able to prove that was a result of that vaccination and all of those things. So you can sue, but I don't think you prove it. And finally, I'll say this: in a lot of situations, the government has implemented immunity in these types of things so that they can try to persuade people to accept the vaccinations. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for putting the nurse on the
Yeah.
spot,
Yeah.
Attorney.
Great.
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about COVID because today, I want to get you all's perspective on this. Today, a study that was done by MIT back in 1972. They did a study to try to predict if humanity's pursuit of economic growth without regard to environmental issues and societal costs, if they pursued that, when would society collapse? And they did the study in 1972. And when they did it, they said that society would experience a total societal collapse by 2060. And by total societal collapse, they meant that abrupt decline in the quality of life, food production, industrial output, and ultimately the human population. Well, today that they ran that study again recently, and now that study has gone from 2060 to now a prediction of society collapsing by 2040. What do you all think about that?
Mm.
From a legal standpoint, from a faith standpoint, I mean, from a science standpoint, this tests all of our sensibilities. I mean, how true is that? I mean, because I'm saying in 1972, 2060 sounded a long way off, and now we're 2020, and they've just taken 20 years off of that.
It must be some truth to that. Bezos is trying to fly out of space. So, so yeah. I mean, things that happen. Let's hear. Yeah. Who have we hadn't heard from yet? Miss Jackson.
So you're saying based upon what's happening now with the COVID-19, they're predicting that by 2060, we'll have a total societal collapse. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not just on COVID. They looked on a number of key variables, and this was back in 1972. In 72, they said the pursuit that not just America, but the world was taking in terms of economic growth and disregard for environmental issues and societal issues, that if they pursued that, we would see a collapse by 2060. And now we have COVID and all of these new things that have now added to it. They're now saying we could very well be in 2040. Especially if you see the diversity in beliefs, not just here in America, but also throughout the world. They were just announcing in Europe how fans were coming after black athletes on the soccer fields now.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that. First of all, I'll be over 100-something years old by then, so it doesn't really matter. Hopefully the riot the rapture will have occurred. So
You'll be caught up.
Yeah.
I plan to be
Resurrection.
Another resurrection.
But I think it's very real. They didn't think climate change was real. Al Gore kept telling them, look at the things that we're doing. Climate change, we're burning up over here in Washington State.
Yes.
Wildfires everywhere. So I agree. They're probably correct. And like you said, they're planning on going to space for some reason. They're not just going up there just looking for an hour. They're planning on relocating, I think. So, just add a little humor to it. But I think they're right on the spot that, and I feel sorry for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, but I don't plan to be here.
Check it out. Okay. And this has been great. So if we, and I know we are beyond the hour. So if we can begin to wrap it up, there's one of our viewers just text me, and she wants to. Let me see. How can I do this? It's a kind of extensive message. She has a point that she needs some answers to, but she was wondering if she could hire. Um, who did she say? Can I hire? Okay, she says because it's their income. Yeah. When I speak at job, substitute. She wants to. I'm trying to. Okay, let me read this correctly because it's so long, and I'll come back. But while I'm doing this, oh, here she is. Something's on the screen right now. Can everybody see that?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that was one of her positions, but she had another one as it pertains to. Ah, dog it. Let me find this. Diggity dog. Okay, while I'm searching for that, if we could, if each one of you could please uh, expound a little bit on one of your most proudest accomplishments, as an attorney, not only an attorney, but a black female attorney. If you could just expound on something that one of your greatest accomplishments that you felt God was smiling on you as you completed that task.
I would say one of my greatest accomplishments was just practicing. I practice a lot in probate court, and I think one of my major accomplishments has been advocating for people, in connection with, because grieving and, experiencing things during that time is very difficult, but being able to advocate for clients who pretty much didn't think that they were going to be able to get certain things or getting assets. I've represented a lot of people when it came to trying to make sure that their voice was heard, in the probate court, and being able to get some of the assets that they probably didn't think that they were going to be able to get. So I would say one of my greatest moments has been advocating for people who really maybe didn't have the funds in order to hire an attorney. And I took the case on and actually was able to get them some type of resources or some type of funds. Those have been some of my greatest moments in practicing law.
Okay.
For me, my greatest accomplishments, I feel, is working in immigration law. It has been, it's a very emotional kind of law, and it's family oriented. When you see so many children at the detention centers worrying and crying about their fathers or mothers getting deported, and I'm able to step in and try to help their parents get out on bond and then to fight their cases. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of immigrants over the years, and many families to be able to remain legally in this country. Because one of the parts of our ministry is to the foreigners and to the widows. And so I feel that God called me to that area over 10 years ago, at a time when, many of us, we're not familiar with other cultures and didn't even speak the language, but to be able to step in and to keep families together. That's our motto here in the office, keeping families together. So I think that's one of the most gratifying and rewarding areas of practice that I've stepped into. And as I said, I've done lots of different areas, but for me, immigration has been the most rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for me, it would be the case I represented for Luther Johnson V here in Miami-Dade County. As I said before, we do administrative law, criminal defense, and civil, where I've done quite a few civil rights cases, for people, victims of police brutality, etc. But a lot of people don't know that under the umbrella of administrative law that deals with schools or education type of law, where your children or you're in college and you're wrongfully disciplined, expelled or something. With the case of Luther was a high school senior. He's Black at Christopher Columbus High School, which is a very affluent, predominantly white school. Marco Rubio, for example, his child goes to school there, and it has a lot of famous alumni. And in that particular situation, Luther played lacrosse, and he was the only Black lacrosse player on his team. Lacrosse is not even a sport that is common to Black players. And Luther had an above 4.0 GPA, had never been arrested in his life, had scholarships offers from institutions across the nation, over 15 scholarship offers, because he also played football. But in this particular situation, due to a 20-second on-field, in-game lacrosse play, the Florida High School Athletic Association banned him from all sports his senior year, which meant he stood to lose everything he'd earned with an above 4.0 GPA. And I fought them first at the school level, all the way up, and they would not revoke that decision. And I took them to court. And the attorney for the Florida High School Athletic Association has been their attorney for almost 40 years. And he'd only lost 3 times. He's practiced in every jurisdiction in this state. And I'll never forget the words, I won't say them right now, but that he said to me that really let me know he planned to win this case. But on the day we went to court and we won, and Luther's head just went down on his mother's shoulder and he cried. And so he was able the next week to go on that field with his brothers, as he calls them, and play football. He was able to play every game, every lacrosse game, never miss a game because of that fight. Right now, he is a rising sophomore in college, and he plays for Florida State University. He plays on their lacrosse team. And so to see that kid not lose everything he fought for and see his parents be so appreciative, that is what touched me most. That Black child was able to move forward in his life. That, I think, was one of my greatest accomplishments.
For me, I'm torn between advocating fiercely for women that have been victimized through sexual harassment on the job and have lost jobs because they would not comply. That I've had cases like that I was able to fight for women that have suffered that type of harassment, touching, grabbing, you name it, but advocating for their rights, as well as individuals that have been terminated through no wrongdoing of their own, but just because of the color of their skin. That the opportunity to fight for those things means a lot to me. And sexual harassment is an area of a law that's very important, that women need to have dignity, and men, when they go on the job.
Okay. I want to bring something just to put it out here and put it on your dashboard. A sister by the name of Pamela Smith. This case will be making a whole lot of noise, and it will need the attention of every astute lawyer that we have. Pamela Smith was incarcerated in Oklahoma. Allegedly, she was raped by one of the gentlemen who she was assigned to a work detail at Oklahoma Department of Public Safety. Remember the name Pamela Smith. So this case is coming up, and if you would Google it and see where you can fit in to help in this case. It was so horrendous. It was tear-jerking. She was on a program this morning with the NNPA, hashtag Let It Be Known, a Black news source, and she presented her case. So we're trying to do everything we can to bring some justice for Miss Pamela Smith and what she was faced with while incarcerated in an Oklahoma prison system. She admitted to doing wrong, but she was willing to do her time, but not to be raped and abused. Pamela Smith from Oklahoma Department, prison department, what is it called? Oklahoma prison. Okay. So I'm going to send each one of you this so you can take a look at it and see what we can do to help this sister. Perry?
Oh, you said we were wrapping up. We're at 9:30. Yeah. So you want to take us out?
You wrapped up? You said your part? I can. One other thing I want to say, I'm sorry, I do apologize. One of our viewers, she had the one I was trying to explain what was going on. There's a mass of information that she sent out, and it's kind of hard for me to decipher in this particular setting. She's a very intelligent sister. She has a degree. She has a 501c3. She has a program, but she has been slighted on every turn. She brings up a very interesting point. She has a degree, but she hasn't been able to be paid for her paid what she thinks her degree is worth, and she wants to give her degree back. You know, so that's another conversation. Her name is M. Denise Lee Kinsler. I'll send you the chain. Miss Williams, she's in our neck of the woods. She's in Miami. So I'll send that to you if we can. That's what we try to do. I also want to say, and this comes from Dr. Martin Luther King. And Dr. King said, law and order exists for the purpose of establishing justice. And when they fail in this purpose, they become dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. So I want to thank each and every one of you for all that you're doing to bust the dam wide open, to let justice flow down and come to everybody. We didn't get a chance to really get into some of the things we wanted to, but I think we had the opportunity to bring some interest. And for those who want to really get involved with this particular setting and conversation, please check out The Attorneys, theattorneyshow.com. And you can really engage in some deep and heavy, profound, and legitimate conversation. And it does not come from the resurrection. It's there already. Good night, and thank you all so very much.
All right. Good night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
It
was a pleasure.
Oh, and one other thing. Coming real soon, the show that will educate us on what's happening in Haiti and to allow us to get a little deeper understanding of what's going on and what's transpiring in that country. That is not a poor, desolate country. It's one that which has been abused by a system, and we'll find out more about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.